It started with a late-night question. One of those odd, sleepy thoughts that only surface when you're staring at the ceiling. Too tired to move, too restless to sleep. What would actually happen if I time traveled to medieval England? Not the Hollywood version. Not the sword fights and courtly dances. The real thing. The mud, the rules, the smells, the lives of regular people. Would I survive even a single day? The idea had slipped into Jack's head while he lay curled up in bed, half listening to some documentary droning through his earbuds. He wasn't trying to learn anything, just pass the time until sleep came. But the phrase, peasants in 13th century England, must have stuck because soon enough, that became the dream. Or, at least, he thought it was a dream. Jack wasn't anyone special, just a 32-year-old with a worn-out laptop, a cat named Freckles, and a tendency to spiral into strange internet rabbit holes. One night, it was Tudor diets. The next, it was medieval justice systems. None of it ever stuck for long, until now. This night, something was different. It didn't begin with the usual fuzziness of dreams. There was no fade-in, no floating sensation. Just cold, a sharp bite of wind against his skin, and a smell so thick and strange it immediately made his stomach twist. Something like damp hay, firewood, and unwashed humanity. When Jack opened his eyes, he wasn't in bed. He was on a dirt road. A real, uneven, cart-worn, dung-dotted dirt road. His hands hit the ground to brace himself, and he could feel the pebbles, the wet patches of earth, the texture of a world that felt altogether too real. Trees loomed overhead, gnarled and crooked, casting jagged shadows in the moonlight. The air was alive with distant sounds, hoofbeats, barking, and the occasional yell. And the sky was so dark it almost felt fake, like someone had draped a black curtain speckled with too many stars. He stood up slowly, brushing off his jeans that now felt wildly out of place. His hoodie offered little comfort in the chilly night. Somewhere nearby, a bell rang out in the distance. Not an electric chime, but a deep, echoing toll, hand-pulled, metallic, ancient. Jack turned in a slow circle. No streetlights, no glow of buildings, no buzzing wires above. Just countryside. A small sign by the road caught his eye, splintered wood with carved letters he could barely read. It was English, but the spelling was wrong. The letters jagged. It looked like it said to Ludford, or maybe Lutford. Hard to say. His brain scrambled to find logic. Was this some immersive park? A strange dream? Had he hit his head? But then, from beyond the trees, a cart rolled into view, wooden wheels creaking, pulled by two slow-moving oxen. A man walked beside it, carrying a lantern. He wore a long tunic, patchy and faded, tied at the waist with rope. His boots were rough and muddy, his beard wild. He looked up and froze when he saw Jack. For a second, neither of them moved. Then the man frowned, stepped forward, and shouted something. It was English, but not the kind Jack understood. It was rougher, older, like Shakespeare read through a blender. The man squinted. "Thou lost, stranger?" Jack's heart stuttered. He wasn't dreaming. Or if he was, his imagination had taken a serious upgrade. Jack stammered, unsure what to say. "Where am I?" The man looked him over, eyeing the hoodie, the jeans, the shoes. "You wear cloth like no tailor I know. From yon city, are ye?" "Sort of," Jack said, trying to keep calm. "What year is it?" That made the man pause. He scratched his chin and said something that sounded like 1292 thereabouts. Jack's knees nearly gave out. He wasn't dreaming. He was in 1292. Somehow, impossibly, he had ended up in medieval England. The man, whose name turned out to be Oswin, offered to walk Jack into the nearby village. "Can't have ye caught by the reeve," he said, though Jack had no idea what a reeve was. "They catch vagrants, they do. If ye be without work or lord, it don't go well." As they walked, Jack took in a landscape. The village was small, just a cluster of wooden homes with thatched roofs, smoke rising lazily from crooked chimneys. Chickens clucked from pens. Dogs slinked around corners. And the people, they all stared. Men in coarse tunics. Women in dresses faded from wear. Children barefoot and curious. They eyed Jack like he was an animal they'd never seen. Oswin pulled him aside quickly. "Say nowt more than ye must. Speak little, walk straight. They'll think the odd, elsewise. It wasn't just the clothes or the accent. It was everything. Jack didn't know how to hold himself, what to say, how to respond. Even the way people walked was different, slower, wearier, like every step had a count. And the smells. The village stank. Not in a way Jack could describe simply, like garbage and smoke and livestock all mixed together with sweat and something old. But after a few minutes, it almost faded into the background. They brought him to the village priest, who lived in a stone building at the edge of the churchyard. The priest was skeptical but kind. He assumed Jack was a runaway from some distant town and offered him shelter in exchange for work, sweeping, tending the gardens, hauling water. Jack agreed. What choice did he have? The next few days were a blur. He learned to keep his head down, speak less, watch more. The villagers called him the strange lad, but some were friendly. A girl named Milla helped him learn how to grind barley and wash with ash soap. A boy named Tolan showed him how to walk quietly so the chickens wouldn't spook. Food was simple, stale bread, weak ale, stewed greens. He missed coffee, missed his phone, missed toothpaste, but he also felt something else, a weird kind of peace. Here, time moved slower. Days were full of simple work and cold air. No buzzing notifications, no news feeds. Just sky and earth and firelight. Still, questions gnawed at him. How'd he get here? Was it permanent? And if he made a mistake, said something wrong, did something odd, would they think he was a witch? Or worse, Jack tried to stay invisible, but curiosity got the better of him. One evening, after helping Oswin stack firewood, he asked a question he probably shouldn't have. Oswin, he said carefully, has anyone else ever come here from far away? Like me? The man's face shifted. The air grew tight. He stopped what he was doing and looked Jack dead in the eyes. There was one, he said quietly. A long time passed. Spoke strange. Dressed strange. Like thee. Jack swallowed. What happened to him? Oswin didn't answer. He just looked toward the woods and muttered, best not speak of such things at night. That night, Jack couldn't sleep. He sat by the dying fire in the corner of the priest's house, heart thudding. Somewhere in this world, someone else had come through. But they were gone now. Disappeared. No one would say how. And as the fire flickered low, casting shadows on the stone walls, Jack heard something. A faint knock at the door. Just one. Then silence. He crept over, slowly lifted the wooden latch and peeked out. But there was no one there. Only a scrap of cloth hanging from a nail on the doorframe. It was black. Modern. Nylon. Jack's heart dropped. Someone had been here. Recently. He wasn't the only time traveler in medieval England. And whoever had left that cloth, they might still be close. Or watching. Jack stared at the black scrap of cloth swaying in the cold night breeze. It couldn't be a coincidence. Nylon didn't exist in the 1200s. This was modern. Sleek. Torn along one edge, like it had been ripped from a jacket or backpack. He ran his fingers along the edges, feeling the unmistakable smoothness of synthetic fabric. He glanced around, but the dirt road outside the priest's home was empty. Just darkness and fog creeping over the fields. Whoever had been there was gone now. He closed the door softly, heart hammering. This wasn't just a fluke. Someone else had been here, recently, and that meant he wasn't alone. But was that a good thing? He didn't sleep. He sat on the stone floor by the fire until dawn, watching the cloth lie folded in his hand. His thoughts kept turning. How long has the other traveler been here? Where did they go? Did they go mad? Were they caught? Killed? The priest didn't ask why Jack looked so worn the next morning. Maybe he assumed it was another night of adjustment. Maybe he just didn't want to ask. Jack tucked the cloth into a slit he'd made in the hem of his tunic and went about his day. He cleaned the hearth, hauled water from the creek, scrubbed old wooden bowls in ash and sand. But his mind stayed locked on that scrap of cloth. Days passed, each one blurred into the next, routines built on simple survival. Wake early, avoid trouble, blend in. He tried to learn everything he could. He watched how Oswin handled tools, how Milla twisted bundles of herbs, how old Matilda at the market laid out her bread to avoid flies. He asked quiet questions, careful never to sound too eager. People in the village still looked at him like he was a little off, but that had softened. Now, they just thought he was slow, maybe from a bump on the head or a fevered childhood. That seemed safer than being suspected of anything else. At night, when the fires died down and the village slipped into silence, Jack would sit by the small window and look into the trees, always wondering if someone was watching him too. The mystery started to grow roots. One morning, after a frost had glazed the grass white and the smoke hung heavy over the rooftops, Jack decided to return to the road where he'd first arrived. He told the priest he was going to gather firewood and slipped out early with a satchel and a dull knife. The walk was longer than he remembered. Cold had crept into the ground and made each step slower. But finally, he found a bend in the road, the place with the crooked tree and the hollow stump. He paced in slow circles, scanning for anything, any mark, any clue. But nothing jumped out. Then, just before he turned back, he spotted it. A boot print. It was small, half covered by leaves, but deeper than the others, and shaped wrong. Too modern. The sole had a faint grid pattern, like a rubber sneaker might leave. He crouched and touched the edge. It couldn't be old. It hadn't rained since the last frost. This had to be recent. He followed it. It wasn't much to go on, just broken twigs and disturbed brush, but he pressed on into the woods. The trees were thick, the undergrowth stubborn. Birds scattered as he moved, and branches caught at his tunic. Then up ahead, something odd. A shape. Angular. Fabric. Jack froze. Slowly, he crept forward. It was a tarp. Faded green, torn, tangled among roots. Definitely not medieval. He stepped closer and saw that it had been weighed down with stones. A hiding spot, maybe, or a discarded camp. Next to it, half buried under leaves, was a flashlight. It was cracked, dead, but unmistakable. Jack picked it up and turned it in his hands. Dusty, cold, but still modern. He wasn't hallucinating this. Someone had been camping here. Someone from his time. But where were they now? He stayed there for hours, searching, looking for more signs. He found an empty plastic wrapper buried near the roots of a tree, faded by weather. The print was foreign, Spanish, maybe, something like a granola bar. That meant this person had come from somewhere else, possibly even another country, another life. That night, back in the village, Jack barely spoke. He nodded through chores, made excuses for his silence. But in his head, everything was loud. The others were out there, or had been, and the cloth on his door. That meant they knew he was here now. But why hadn't they come back? Why just leave a scrap? Maybe it was a warning. Jack began keeping a record. He used bits of charcoal and bark, scratched notes into the beams of the priest's shed, hidden beneath bundles of firewood. He made maps, rough sketches of paths he'd taken, marks on trees. Anything he could to keep track. It gave him purpose, something to work on when the days stretched out with endless monotony. One night, Milla came to visit him at the priest's house. She knocked softly and offered him a bundle of dried apples wrapped in cloth. "I saw you walking the woods," she said, not accusing, just curious. "No one goes that far. Not without reason." Jack smiled politely. "Just curious. I used to walk a lot. Where I'm from." She tilted her head, studying him. "You come from far?" He hesitated. "Yeah, very far." Milla nodded, like she already knew. "Some say the woods have spirits. Old ones. They guard things. Keep strangers from going too deep." Jack said nothing. Then she leaned in slightly and whispered, "There's talk. Of another. One like you. Years past. Came from the clouds, they say. Wore silver on his hands and fire on his chest." Jack's breath caught. What happened to him? No one knows. Some say he went mad. Some say the reeve took him. She looked toward the door, her voice low. But others say he built something in the forest. A place where time runs wrong. They call it the Hollow. Jack didn't sleep that night, either. The Hollow. A legend? A real place? Could that be where the other traveler had gone? He decided he had to find it. Over the next few weeks, Jack worked harder to earn the village's trust. He helped repair fences, carried baskets, even joined in a winter feast, though he struggled to swallow the tough meat and bitter ale. Slowly, people stopped watching him quite so closely. He used the extra freedom to explore further. He mapped trails, marked trees, even found a small stream that didn't appear on any of the village's rough sketches. Then, one foggy afternoon, he found it. Not a clearing, not a cave, but a dip in the earth, unnaturally smooth. A perfect circle, maybe 30 feet across, where the trees bent inward, as if bowing toward something long gone. The air felt wrong. He couldn't explain it, just heavier. Still, and at the center, half buried in dirt and moss, was metal. A beam, smooth, curved, burnt black on one edge. Not from this time. Jack fell to his knees, brushing away the dirt. The metal was cool, strange, like it had been dropped from a great height. And next to it, carved into a flat stone, were words. Not Old English, but letters he recognized. RH. Still here. Tell them I tried. Jack's breath caught in his throat. Someone had left this. Someone who knew people might come after. But who were they? What did they try to do? He wanted to dig further, but the light was fading. He'd already been gone too long. He marked the spot with a broken branch and made his way back, heart pounding the whole time. That night, he wrote more notes. Drew what he saw. He didn't know what RH stood for, but it was someone. Someone like him. Someone who had tried to survive this strange, unforgiving world, but failed. Jack felt something growing inside him. Urgency. He had to understand more. About time. About why he was here. About what was happening in the forest. But the more he searched, the more questions he found. Then, one morning, Oswin came knocking. His expression was tight. The Reeve wants thee. Jack tensed. Why? Oswin didn't say. He was escorted to the center of the village, where the Reeve, a heavy-set man with sharp eyes, stood waiting. A woman had reported seeing Jack in the woods, near the old hollow, said he was talking to himself, carrying strange tools. Jack's heart pounded as the Reeve questioned him. He gave simple answers. I walk to clear my head. I use a knife to cut kindling. I talk to myself sometimes when I'm alone. The Reeve watched him for a long time, then finally let him go. But Jack knew the man didn't believe him. From that moment on, he felt watched. Everywhere he went, eyes followed. Even Milla seemed more cautious. The tension grew. And then, just before the snow came, someone broke into the shed. His notes were gone. The maps, the bar carvings, the charcoal drawings. Everything he'd written vanished. But the message on the stone and the hollow remained. Still here. Tell him I tried. And now, more than ever, Jack needed to know what RH had tried to do, and who might be trying to stop him from finding out. The next few days were a blur. Jack tried to act normal, chopping firewood, helping at the mill, offering quiet prayers during Mass, but his thoughts never stopped racing. The shed was too clean now. Whoever took his notes had left no sign. Not a footprint, not a thread. It was as if the wind had simply blown them away. But Jack knew better. Someone had taken him on purpose, and they knew exactly what to look for. He stopped writing after that. No more maps. No more notes. He kept everything in his head, memorizing every tree root and slope near the hollow, every symbol carved into the rock, every half-covered relic. It felt like he was being hunted now. Not by wolves. By someone like him. One morning, just as the frost began to loosen its grip on the land, Jack found a scrap of paper under a stone behind the church. Tucked so carefully, so deliberately, it couldn't have been dropped by accident. He opened it with shaking hands. The handwriting was blocky, uncertain, as if written with a dull edge. They're listening. Don't trust the priest. Meet at the black birch under the Twin Hills. Full moon. Alone. No name. No signature. Just that. Jack folded it and slid it into his boot. He couldn't tell if this was real or a trap, but he couldn't ignore it. The days passed slowly, thick with silence. Jack barely spoke. He kept to himself, only speaking when spoken to, pretending to be tired or sick. At night, he replayed the message in his head over and over. Don't trust the priest. That part stung. Father Edric had been kind, honest. At least, Jack thought he had. But now that doubt had taken root, it wouldn't let go. He started noticing little things. The way Edric sometimes watched him too closely. The small marks Jack found on the edge of the priest's desk, like symbols carved and scratched out again. And once, just once, he saw Edric speaking to the Reeve behind the chapel. Their faces tense, their voices low. The night of the full moon came with thick clouds. No stars, just a pale disk rising above the trees like an old eye, watching. Jack left quietly, slipping from the churchyard and into the fields. The air was sharp and wet. Every step felt louder than it should have. Every rustle made him pause. The twin hills weren't far. He'd passed them before while hunting mushrooms near the creek. They were rounded, low, like two sleeping beasts. And between them, just as the note had said, stood a single black birch. It looked dead. Pale bark split and twisted like bones. Someone was already there. A figure. Hooded. Still. Jack stopped 20 feet away. Who are you? No answer. Just a gesture, 2 fingers to the lips, then to the trees. Silence. Jack stepped forward slowly, every muscle tense. The figure reached into their cloak and pulled out something small, round with a shine. They tossed it to Jack. He caught it. A metal button. Modern. Plastic backing. Something from a coat or uniform. Not from this world. I found it in the hollow, the figure said softly. A woman. Her voice was low, steady, but her hands trembled. You've been looking too, haven't you? Jack nodded. How long have you been here? She looked past him, into the darkness. 2 winters. Maybe 3. I lost count. The cold doesn't help. Jack stepped closer, now able to see her face more clearly. She looked mid-30s, dark circles under her eyes, hair knotted behind her head. Her coat was patched with medieval fabric, but clearly once a windbreaker. She wore boots like his, too modern for this time. Who are you? He asked again. My name's Mara, she said. Mara Lewis. I was a teacher before. History. You. Jack. I don't really know how I got here. I woke up in the woods. She exhaled slowly. Same. Jack hesitated, then asked, Did you write the message? No, she said. I found it too. Same place. Same stone. He stared at her. Then who? She shook her head. There's more of us. I don't know how many. Some don't want to be found. Jack felt his throat tighten. Why? Because they believe someone's controlling this, she said. That this is a test. Or a trap. Or worse. Jack looked down at the button in his hand. The man who left the stone in the hollow, RH. He tried something. Maybe to leave. Maybe to warn someone. Mara nodded. I found one of his notes once. Buried under a pile of rusted tools near the creek. It said they're not from now. That's all. Just those words. Jack's skin prickled. What do you think that means? I don't know, she said. But I've seen things. She paused, watching him. You've seen them too, haven't you? He hesitated. Seen what? Mara's voice dropped lower. Figures in the woods. Shadows that don't move with the wind. Lights that blink once, then vanish. Jack didn't answer, but she saw it in his eyes. You're not crazy, she said. None of us are. Whatever this is, it's not natural. They stood in silence for a while. Then Mara said, I need to show you something. But not tonight. There's too many watching. Ooh, she looked toward the village. You'll see. Jack left before dawn. The next morning, the priest asked him where he'd been. Jack lied. Said he went walking to clear his head. Eddard didn't press. But Jack noticed his hands were dirtier than usual. Like he'd been digging. That afternoon, the Reeve ordered Jack to join a group headed north to help another village rebuild a bridge. It would mean 3 days away from the hollow. Away from Mara. Jack didn't argue. He just packed quietly, hid the button in his boot, and left. The group walked through the hills in silence. 6 men and 2 boys, all carrying ropes and timber. Jack stayed near the back. The others talked about nothing, mud, frost, ale, but Jack kept his eyes on the woods. The first night, while the others slept, he heard movement. Not an animal. Not wind. He slipped away from camp, heart pounding. In the trees, he saw it, just for a moment. A flash of red, like a light, or a reflection. Then gone. He walked toward it. Quiet. Careful. There, half hidden under a bush, was a broken lens. Smooth. Curved. Like part of a camera. He stared at it, frozen. Someone, something, had been watching them. And they had left this behind. He buried it before returning to camp. When he got back to the village 3 days later, Mara was gone. No one had seen her. Or so they said. Jack searched every path. The black birch. The hollow. Even the creek. Nothing. Then inside the church, under a loose stone in the floor near the altar, he found another note. They took her. She found the machine. Be careful. There was no name. No date. But the words were carved in charcoal. His charcoal. Whoever left it had been in his shed. He returned to the hollow that night, dug through the dirt near the bent tree roots. Deeper than before, his hand hit something solid, a metal panel. He cleared it, heart pounding. There, hidden beneath layers of earth and moss, was a door. A real door, bolted shut, cold, burnt on the edges, with one word scratched into the top, almost invisible. Exit. But no handle, no lock, just smooth, cold steel. Jack stared at it, unable to breathe. Then behind him, a twig snapped. He turned, but no one was there, only the wind. Jack stood frozen, staring at the metal door embedded in the earth. The word exit, etched into its surface, seemed both a promise and a threat. He reached out, fingers grazing the cold metal, searching for a handle or latch, but found nothing. The door was seamless, unyielding. Behind him, the forest was silent. The snap of the twigs still echoed in his mind, but no movement followed. He turned slowly, eyes scanning the darkness, but saw only shadows and the faint outlines of trees. The wind whispered through the leaves, carrying with it the scent of damp earth and something else, something metallic. He returned his gaze to the door, heart pounding. Who had built this? And why was it hidden here, beneath layers of soil and roots? The implications were staggering. This wasn't a relic of the past. It was something else entirely. Jack knew he couldn't stay here. Not now. Not alone. He needed help, information, anything that could shed light on the enigma before him. He carefully covered the door with the displaced earth and foliage, erasing any sign of its existence. As he made his way back to the village, the questions swirled in his mind. Who was RH? What had Mara discovered before she disappeared? And who had left the note warning him about the priest? The village was quiet upon his return. The usual evening activities had ceased, and an eerie stillness hung in the air. Jack slipped into the church, seeking solace or perhaps answers. Father Edric was there, kneeling in prayer. He looked up as Jack entered, his eyes reflecting a mix of surprise and something else. Concern? Suspicion? Jack, Edric said, rising to his feet. You're back. We were worried. Jack forced a smile. Just needed some time to think. Edric nodded slowly. Understandable. These are trying times. They stood in silence for a moment before Jack spoke again. Father, have you ever heard of a place called the Hollow? Edric's expression changed subtly, a flicker of recognition. Or was it fear? Crossing his face. Why do you ask? I came across the name. It intrigued me. Edric hesitated. It's an old tale, a place of superstition. Best to stay away from such things. Jack nodded, sensing the conversation was over. He left the church, the priest's reaction only deepening the mystery. That night, sleep eluded him. He lay awake, thoughts racing, piecing together fragments of information, trying to form a coherent picture. The hollow, the door, the missing notes, Mara's disappearance, all connected, but how? Determined to find answers, Jack decided to revisit the hollow at first light. Perhaps in the daylight, he could uncover more clues, something he missed before. The morning sun cast long shadows as he approached the site. The forest was alive with the sounds of birds and rustling leaves, a stark contrast to the ominous atmosphere of the previous night. He reached the spot where the door was hidden and began to clear the covering once more. As he worked, he noticed something new, a small, metallic object protruding from the soil nearby. He picked it up, brushing off the dirt to reveal a coin, unlike any he had seen before. It bore strange symbols and an inscription in a language he couldn't decipher. Pocketing the coin, Jack turned his attention back to the door. He traced the edges, searching for any mechanism that might open it. As his fingers pressed against a particular spot, he felt a slight give. A soft click echoed, and a seam appeared in the metal surface. Heart pounding, Jack stepped back as the door slowly opened, revealing a dark passageway descending into the earth. A faint, bluish light emanated from within, casting eerie shadows on the surrounding trees. He hesitated, the unknown beckoning him forward. Taking a deep breath, Jack stepped into the passage, the door closing silently behind him. Jack stood frozen, staring at the metal door embedded in the earth. The word exit, etched into its surface, seemed both a promise and a threat. He reached out, fingers grazing the cold metal, searching for a handle or latch, but found nothing. The door was seamless, unyielding. Behind him, the forest was silent. The snap of the twig still echoed in his mind, but no movement followed. He turned slowly, eyes scanning the darkness, but saw only shadows and the faint outlines of trees. The wind whispered through the leaves, carrying with it the scent of damp earth, and something else, something metallic. He returned his gaze to the door, heart pounding. Who had built this? And why was it hidden here, beneath layers of soil and roots? The implications were staggering. This wasn't a relic of the past. It was something else entirely. Jack knew he couldn't stay here. Not now. Not alone. He needed help, information, anything that could shed light on the enigma before him. He carefully covered the door with the displaced earth and foliage, erasing any sign of its existence. As he made his way back to the village, the questions swirled in his mind. Who was RH? What had Mara discovered before she disappeared? And who had left the note warning him about the priest? The village was quiet upon his return. The usual evening activities had ceased, and an eerie stillness hung in the air. Jack slipped into the church, seeking solace or perhaps answers. Father Edric was there, kneeling in prayer. He looked up as Jack entered, his eyes reflecting a mix of surprise and something else. Concern? Suspicion? Jack, Edric said, rising to his feet. You're back. We were worried. Jack forced a smile. Just needed some time to think. Edric nodded slowly. Understandable. These are trying times. They stood in silence for a moment before Jack spoke again. Father, have you ever heard of a place called the Hollow? Edric's expression changed subtly, a flicker of recognition, or was it fear, crossing his face. Why do you ask? I came across the name. It intrigued me. Edric hesitated. It's an old tale, a place of superstition. Best to stay away from such things. Jack nodded, sensing the conversation was over. He left the church, the priest's reaction only deepening the mystery. That night, sleep eluded him. He lay awake, thoughts racing, piecing together fragments of information, trying to form a coherent picture. The hollow, the door, the missing notes, Mara's disappearance. All connected, but how? Determined to find answers, Jack decided to revisit the hollow at first light. Perhaps in the daylight, he could uncover more clues, something he missed before. The morning sun cast long shadows as he approached the site. The forest was alive with the sounds of birds and rustling leaves, a stark contrast to the ominous atmosphere of the previous night. He reached the spot where the door was hidden and began to clear the covering once more. As he worked, he noticed something new, a small, metallic object protruding from the soil nearby. He picked it up, brushing off the dirt to reveal a coin, unlike any he had seen before. It bore strange symbols and an inscription in a language he couldn't decipher. Pocketing the coin, Jack turned his attention back to the door. He traced the edges, searching for any mechanism that might open it. As his fingers pressed against a particular spot, he felt a slight give. A soft click echoed, and a seam appeared in the metal surface. Heart pounding, Jack stepped back as the door slowly opened, revealing a dark passageway descending into the earth. A faint, bluish light emanated from within, casting eerie shadows on the surrounding trees. He hesitated, the unknown beckoning him forward. Taking a deep breath, Jack stepped into the passage, the door closing silently behind him. Jack froze. The voice came from deeper in the shadows, soft, almost reluctant. He could feel the presence before he could see it. Footsteps echoed faintly, not hurried, not aggressive, just inevitable. Slowly, a figure stepped out from behind one of the ancient shelves. It was a man, cloaked like Elin, but older, with silver hair and eyes that seemed to catch the flickering torchlight without reflecting it. Jack backed away slightly, instinctively tightening his grip on Mara's journal page. "Who are you?" he asked. The man didn't answer at first. He walked past the shelves, glancing at them like someone who had read every word 100 times. "They call me Keeper," he finally said. "I tend to the Hollow's memory." Jack frowned. Memory? Elin said that's the other tunnel. The man smiled faintly. She still sees in directions. That's her flaw. In here, memory and history are the same, just different disguises. The difference lies in who's doing the remembering. Jack tried to steady his breath. Do you know what happened to Mara? I know what she saw. The keeper said, stopping a few paces away. And I know what she tried to do with it. She thought truth could free her. Couldn't it? The keeper tilted his head. You're not listening, Jack. Truth doesn't live in a hollow. Only reflections of it. Some brighter, some darker, but never whole. Jack's hand tightened around the page. Why am I here? You tell me. I didn't choose this. No, the keeper said. But you were chosen. That's different. Jack stepped closer. By who? The keeper nodded toward the page. You've read her words. Does she sound like someone making a choice? Or someone following a path she thought was hers, until it wasn't? Jack looked at the parchment again. Mara's last line repeated in his mind. I saw what waits. And now it waits for you. He looked back up. What is it? The keeper's face grew serious. The hollow was not built. It was discovered. Long before books, long before kings. It predates language. The first ones called it the root of time. Others called it a curse. I call it a gate. A gate to what? The keeper took a deep breath. Possibility. Jack's mind reeled. That's not an answer. It's the only one that doesn't lie. Jack shook his head, stepping back. This is too much. I just wanted to understand. I thought, maybe this was a hidden part of history, something people forgot. The keeper looked almost sad. People didn't forget. They'd buried it. And some of us have been digging ever since. A tremor rippled through the floor again. Not strong, but enough to shake dust loose from the shelves. The flames in the torches flickered as if catching their breath. You need to leave, the keeper said suddenly. This place isn't safe right now. It's waking. Jack's heart skipped. Waking. They always try to stop it. Seal it. Rewrite it. But always wakes. And when it does, a loud cracking sound echoed through the archive. One of the stone walls behind Jack shifted, parting to reveal a narrow stairwell. Cold wind spilled through the opening, bringing with it a sound that chilled Jack more than anything else so far. A heartbeat. Slow. Rhythmic. Massive. The keeper looked at Jack with something close to pity. You wanted to see the past. Be careful. Someone sees back. Jack stumbled toward the stairwell. He didn't want to, but some pull, instinct or something older, dragged him forward. He looked back once more. The keeper was already gone. He descended the steps. The air grew colder, wetter, darker. Moss clung to the stones, and carvings twisted across the walls. Some beautiful, others monstrous. The heartbeat grew louder, not just in his ears now, but in his chest, as if something deep below was sinking with him. At the bottom, the stairwell opened into a vast cavern. Jack could barely comprehend the size of it. In the center was a monolith, 20 feet tall, shaped like an obelisk, carved from obsidian that shimmered like oil under torchlight. He stepped closer, and then he saw them. Figures, dozens, lined the cavern walls, frozen in place like statues. But they weren't statues. Jack could see the subtle movement of breath in some of them. Their eyes tracked him, some wide with terror, others completely blank. He turned to leave, but the heartbeat thundered again, and the monolith cracked down the middle. From within, a light spilled out, white and cold and endless. Jack shielded his eyes, but it was already too late. He remembered, not something he had lived, but something he was yet to live. Jack didn't stop running until the cold air bit through his clothes and the sounds of heavy footsteps faded behind him. The narrow passageways twisted like a maze, and every shadow seemed alive. His breath came out in ragged gasps, and his mind spun with more questions than answers. What was this hollow? Who were those watchers frozen in stone? And most importantly, what was behind the red door? The door Elin had warned him about with such fear? He had barely a moment to think before the village appeared again, but this time, it was different. The market square was empty, silent, but for the faint rustle of wind carrying the scent of wood smoke and damp earth. A few stray cats slinked between stalls covered in thick layers of dust, abandoned like relics from a forgotten age. Jack's boots made no sound on the soft, muddy ground as he crept forward, his senses sharpening. A flicker of movement caught his eye near the edge of the town, where the shadows grew longer and thicker. He froze, heart pounding. There, leaning against the cracked stone wall of an old chapel, was a man. His clothes were torn and stained, and his face hidden beneath a wide-brimmed hat. But the weight in Jack's gut told him this was no ordinary traveler. "Why do you run from what you don't understand?" The man's voice was low and rough, like gravel grinding underfoot. Jack swallowed hard, unsure whether to answer. The man straightened and stepped forward, revealing a face marked by lines of worry and something else, a deep sadness, maybe even guilt. "My name's Aiden," the stranger said. "I've walked these roads longer than you can imagine. The Hollow isn't just a place. It's a curse, a wound that never heals." Jack felt the words like a cold hand grabbing his shoulder. "What do you mean? What curse?" Aiden glanced over his shoulder, as if expecting someone or something to follow. "There's a story here, one that the villagers whisper in hushed tones. A story about a choice made long ago, a bargain struck in blood and shadow." Jack's mind raced back to the vision. The chanting, the ancient oak, the roots glowing with unnatural light. Mara bound and waiting. "Is this connected to the Hollow?" Aiden nodded. "More than you know. That place is a gateway, a thin spot between worlds. The past and the present bleed into one another there. And time isn't what you think it is." Jack clenched his fists. "I don't understand. How can I stop this? Why am I here?" Aiden looked him in the eye, his gaze steady. "Because you have to. You're tied to this place in ways you don't yet see. And if you don't act, the cycle will repeat, and more will be lost." Before Jack could ask more, a sudden howl echoed from the forest, cutting through the cold air like a knife. Aiden's face darkened. "They're coming." Jack's breath caught. "Who?" "Those who guard the secret. The keepers. They protect the Hollow's silence, no matter the cost." Fear pressed down on Jack's chest, but something else stirred, determination. The vision, the monolith, the watchers, Mara, none of it was random. He was part of a story centuries in the making, a story that demanded to be told and rewritten. "Then we don't have much time," Jack said, his voice steady now. "What do we do?" Aiden pulled from his coat a small, worn book. The leather was cracked, pages yellowed with age. "This," he said, "holds the key. But be warned, once you start down this path, there's no turning back." Jack took the book with trembling hands. The cover was embossed with strange symbols, and as he opened it, he realized the pages were filled with drawings of the village, the forest, the monolith, and words in a language he didn't know, but somehow understood. Suddenly, the ground beneath them trembled. The shadows seemed to twist and reach, and from the darkness emerged figures clad in dark robes. The keepers. Jack's heart pounded harder. The chase had begun. With the book clutched tight, Jack and Aiden fled into the forest, deeper into the unknown, into the tangled roots of the past, where answers hid. But so did danger. The Hollow's secrets were waking, and Jack's time was running out. The story was far from over. What would Jack discover next? Who was Mara really? And what terrible truth lurked behind the red door waiting for him? The answers waited in the dark, and only Jack could find them. Jack's lungs burned as he and Aiden plunged deeper into the forest, the thick canopy swallowing the fading light above them. The book felt heavy in his hands, not just with age and wear, but with the weight of the secrets it held. Each step seemed to pull him further into a world that was never meant to be touched, one where time folded back on itself and shadows whispered old, dangerous truths. Behind them, the rhythmic crunch of leaves underfoot reminded Jack that the keepers were relentless. Their dark robes fluttered like crows in the twilight, their faces hidden beneath deep hoods. The forest closed in tighter, the twisted roots and brambles seeming to reach out to snag him. The air was thick with the scent of damp earth and moss, but beneath it lurked something else, a faint, acrid smell that set Jack's nerves on edge. "Keep moving," Aiden urged, eyes sharp as he scanned the darkness. "They won't stop until they find that book." Jack glanced down at the pages, the strange symbols glowing faintly, as if alive. It was a language he didn't understand, yet somehow it whispered to him in dreams and half-remembered thoughts. The drawings told stories of the village's ancient past, of pacts made in desperation, and of the Hollow, a place where time itself seemed fractured, where the past and present bled together in ways no one could fully control. "Why me?" Jack gasped, stumbling over a root. "Why did I get pulled into this?" Aiden's face was grim. "Because you carry the bloodline. The curse runs through your veins. Mara was the last of your line who tried to break the cycle. She failed, and now it's your turn." Jack's mind flashed back to the vision. The wreath of dried flowers in Mara's hair, her calm eyes as the roots pulled her under the ancient oak. What had she been trying to say? What had she tried to warn him about? A sudden snap of a twig made them freeze. The keepers were close. Jack's heart hammered in his chest as Aiden pulled him to a small hollow beneath a fallen tree. They crouched, barely daring to breathe. The keepers passed just yards away, their whispered chants threading through the night air. Jack strained to listen, catching fragments of words: binding, silence, sacrifice. When the footsteps finally faded, Jack let out a shaky breath. "We can't stay here long," Aiden whispered. "But there's a place nearby, an old chapel, long forgotten. The book mentions it. It might hold answers." Jack nodded, his fingers trembling as he closed the book. He felt the enormity of what lay ahead. The chapel wasn't just a ruin. It was a key to the mystery, maybe even a way to undo the curse that bound the village, the Hollow, and his family. They moved again, careful and silent, through the thick underbrush until the chapel came into view. It was swallowed by vines and shadow, the stone walls cracked and moss-covered. The stained glass windows were shattered, but the heavy wooden door stood firm, dark, ancient, and foreboding. Jack reached for the handle, but a sudden chill ran down his spine. The air shifted, and a whisper floated to his ears, soft but urgent. "Turn back." He hesitated, heart pounding. Aiden's gaze was steady but wary. "This is where the past and present meet," he said. "Inside, you'll find what you need. But won't be easy." Jack pushed the door open, the creak echoing through the empty chapel. Inside, dust motes danced in the faint moonlight filtering through broken glass. The air smelled of old stone and forgotten prayers. At the altar lay a carved box, its surface etched with the same strange symbols as the book. Jack stepped forward, hands shaking, and lifted the lid. Inside was a small mirror, cracked but shimmering with a strange light. The moment Jack touched it, the world tilted. The chapel disappeared, replaced by a flood of memories. Not his own, but of those who had lived and died in this cursed village. He saw Mara again, her voice echoing in his mind. "Break the cycle before it's too late." Suddenly, the door slammed shut behind him. Darkness swallowed the room. Jack's pulse raced as footsteps filled the chapel, closer and closer. The keepers had found him. He wasn't just fighting for answers anymore. He was fighting for survival, and for a chance to change the story that had trapped them all. The climax was near. Every secret, every shadow, every whispered truth was coming together. But what awaited beyond the chapel's walls, beyond the red door Elin had warned about, was still unknown. The question wasn't just if Jack could survive, but what price he would pay if he failed. The Hollow's grip was tightening, and time was running out. Jack's heart pounded like a drum in the darkness. The air was thick and cold around him, a crushing silence pressing in as the footsteps grew nearer. His fingers gripped the cracked mirror, its surface pulsing faintly like a heartbeat. A strange warmth spread through his palms, the only comfort in this suffocating gloom. He tried to steady his breath, try to focus. The chapel's stone walls seemed to close in, the faint moonlight unable to reach the depths of the shadows. Somewhere beyond, the keepers whispered in voices that sounded both far away and right beside him, hushed and urgent. Jack's mind raced, searching for a way out, a plan, anything that could keep him alive. The mirror hummed softly in his hands, and suddenly a flicker of a vision appeared in the glass. Mara, reaching toward him, her eyes filled with desperation and warning. The roots, the ancient oak, the red door, all flashed through the image, urging him to remember. Break the cycle. Her voice echoed, soft as the wind but clear as a bell. The chapel door slammed shut behind him, the lock clicking into place like the final beat of a slow, cruel clock. Jack spun around, heart leaping in his throat. The footsteps halted, and a shadow moved against the faint light. A figure cloaked in dark robes stepped forward. "You should not have come here," the keeper said, voice low and cold. "This place is sealed for a reason. The past must stay buried." Jack raised the mirror instinctively, feeling its strange power pull stronger as if responding to the threat. The keeper recoiled slightly, eyes narrowing. "You carry the blood. You carry the burden. But it is too late." Desperation surged through Jack. "No, it's never too late." The keeper stepped forward, chanting words in the old language, the one written in the book Aiden gave him. The air grew thick, electric. Shadows writhed on the walls, twisting into shapes like grasping hands. Jack felt the mirror's warmth surge through him, a tether pulling him back to the visions, to Mara, to the ancient oak. He closed his eyes and focused, whispering the words he barely understood but felt in his bones. "Break the cycle, break the cycle." The chanting faltered. The shadows shrieked and recoiled, as if burned by the light. The mirror glowed brighter, filling the chapel with a soft, golden radiance. The keeper screamed, stumbling backward, clutching their robes. The door burst open with a thunderous crash, letting in the cold night air and Aiden's voice calling urgently. "Jack! Now!" Jack didn't hesitate. He dashed through the door, the golden light trailing behind him like a comet's tail. The forest welcomed him with open arms, thick and alive, as if protecting him from the darkness that pursued. Behind him, the chapel began to crumble, ancient stones collapsing in slow motion, swallowed by the earth. They ran, through twisted roots, tangled branches, the heavy scent of moss and decay. Jack clutched the mirror tight, its light guiding them like a beacon. But the hollow was not done with him yet. As they reached the edge of the village, a figure blocked their path, tall, silent, and impossibly still. Mara. But she wasn't quite the woman from Jack's visions. Her eyes glowed faintly in the moonlight, and a soft smile played on her lips, one that held both hope and sorrow. "Jack," she whispered, voice both distant and near, "you've started something no one can stop. The past is alive, and it's coming for you." Jack's breath caught. The red door, the curse, the watchers, all circling closer. The mystery was unraveling, but with every answer, new questions burned brighter. The hollow was awakening, and Jack's journey had only just begun. Mara's smile lingered, fragile and unsettling, as she stepped aside, fading like mist with the morning sun. Jack blinked, trying to grasp if what he saw was real or just another trick of the hollow's tangled magic. Aiden grabbed his arm, urgency clear in his voice. "We don't have long," Aiden said, eyes darting toward the darkening woods. "The keepers are regrouping, and whatever is coming, it's drawing power." Jack glanced down at the mirror again. The cracks glittered like tiny stars, but the light inside had dimmed, like a candle fighting a rising wind. He felt that familiar weight in his chest, the burden of history and fate pressing heavier than ever. "Why me?" Jack whispered. "Why do I have to carry this?" "Because you're the last link," Aiden replied quietly. "Your family's choices echo through every shadow in this village. Mara tried to fight it, but she was trapped. You're the only one left who can decide whether it ends or repeats." They moved swiftly toward the heart of the village, now a ghost town swallowed by fog and silence. Empty homes with shuttered windows stood like graves, their stories lost to time. Stories of families torn apart, of secrets buried deep beneath stone and soil. Jack's thoughts drifted to the red door, the one Elin warned about in her cryptic letters. The door that wasn't just a door, but a barrier between what was and what could be. Somewhere beyond it lay the truth, or perhaps something far darker. As they approached the village square, Jack caught sight of flickering lights, torches held by figures cloaked in black. The keepers. They were gathering, circling around an ancient well that yawned like an open mouth, dark and bottomless. This well, Aiden explained, is the center of the Hollow's power. It's where the curse began, where the old magic was bound to the land. If they succeed tonight, the curse will grow stronger, and no one will escape its grasp. Jack swallowed hard. The keepers began chanting again, the same words he'd heard in the chapel, but louder, more urgent. The air vibrated with an energy that prickled his skin, a force older than memory itself. Suddenly, from the shadows, a figure emerged, a woman cloaked in white, her hair like silver threads catching the moonlight. She moved with purpose, eyes blazing. "Elin, Jack," she called, voice steady despite the chaos. "You must stop them. The key lies in the mirror. It can break the curse, but only if you face the truth within yourself." Jack held the mirror up, feeling the light flicker in response to Elin's words. "What truth? What am I supposed to see?" Elin's gaze softened. "Not what you want to see. What you need to see. Your family's past, the sacrifices made, the lies told to protect a secret. Only by embracing it can you change the future." The keeper's chant reached a fever pitch, the well glowing faintly like a heartbeat beneath the earth. Jack's heart matched the rhythm, wild and unsteady. "Are you ready?" Aiden asked quietly. Jack hesitated, then nodded. Whatever lay ahead, the moment of reckoning was here. He lifted the mirror to his face and let the light flood over him. The world blurred. Time twisted. Faces, places, memories flooded in. His ancestors, Mara's final moments, the village's darkest secrets, woven together in a tapestry of pain and hope. But then, amid the visions, a shadow darker than any before loomed. Something ancient, watching, waiting. The curse wasn't just a story. It was alive, and it was hungry. Jack blinked, gasping for air as the visions faded. Around him, the keepers stopped chanting, eyes fixed on the mirror's fading glow. "You cannot escape what you are," the cloaked leader said, stepping forward. "The Hollow claims all." Jack's fingers clenched the mirror tighter, feeling the last flicker of light inside. The battle wasn't just for the village. It was for the soul of time itself. And the next step could change everything or end it all. The chill in the air tightened around Jack like a cold hand gripping his soul. The mirror pulsed faintly, its fragile light the only thing standing between him and the darkness pressing in. He could feel the weight of generations bearing down on him. The unspoken fears, the whispered regrets, the blood debts etched into his family's name. The villagers' homes, once bustling with life and laughter, stood silent and empty. Windows were shuttered, doors nailed tight, as if the very earth had closed itself off, sealing secrets away from prying eyes. Jack's footsteps echoed hollowly on the cobblestones, the only sound aside from the distant chant of the keepers. Each syllable they spoke was thick with menace, soaked in ancient power that felt alive, almost breathing. Aiden moved beside him, eyes sharp and wary, every muscle tense. "They've been waiting for you," he murmured, his voice low enough for only Jack to hear. "Not just to stop you, but to test you." Jack clenched his jaw. "Test me how?" Aiden hesitated, then spoke. "They want to see if you'll break. If the burden is too heavy, the curse will continue. They'll use your fear against you." Jack's gaze hardened. "Then I won't give them that satisfaction." Up ahead, the well yawned wide, a gaping black hole carved into the earth like the mouth of some ancient beast. Around its rim, the keepers gathered, their dark robes swirling in the cold wind. Their faces were hidden, but Jack felt their eyes, cold and unblinking, fixed on him like predators stalking prey. Elin stepped forward from the shadows, her white cloak stark against the black. "You must listen," she said urgently, voice carrying an edge of desperation. "The mirror is not just a tool, it's a bridge. It connects the past and the present. Through it, you will see what has been hidden. But beware, the truth will challenge everything you think you know." Jack nodded, gripping the mirror tighter, the cracks in its surface like spiderwebs of fragile hope. He stepped closer to the well, feeling the ground tremble faintly beneath his feet. The chanting grew louder, an unbearable pulse that synced with his pounding heart. The mirror's light flickered, casting shifting shadows that danced like ghosts on the stone walls. Suddenly, a voice cut through the noise, a scream sharp and piercing. Jack froze, turning toward the sound. From behind a collapsed building, a figure stumbled into view. Young, desperate, eyes wide with terror. It was Mara, but she wasn't the Mara Jack remembered. Her face was pale, her clothes torn and dirt-streaked. She looked as though she had run for days through the wild woods, haunted and hunted. "Jack," she gasped, voice trembling. "You have to stop them. The keepers, they've been keeping the curse alive, feeding it with fear and blood." Jack rushed to her side, heart aching at the sight of her broken spirit. "What happened? How did you escape?" Mara shook her head, struggling to catch her breath. "I tried to break the cycle, just like you. But they caught me. They marked me. The curse has a new hunger. It wants more than just the village now. It's spreading." Her words sent a shiver down Jack's spine. The curse was no longer contained. It was growing unstoppable. Behind them, the keepers turned, their chanting faltering as they spotted Mara. One stepped forward, raising a hand, and a wave of cold energy rippled toward them. Jack raised the mirror, its light flaring fiercely, pushing back the dark wave. The ground shook beneath their feet, stones cracking and splintering. "This ends now," Jack said, voice steady despite the chaos. "We end the curse." Elin joined him, holding out an ancient key, an ornate piece of iron shaped like a twisting vine. "The key to the red door," she explained. "It leads to the heart of the curse. You must open it and face what lies beyond." Jack felt the weight of the key in his hand, cold and real. The red door, the symbol of all that was hidden, feared, and forbidden. Together, they ran toward the ancient oak tree at the village's edge, the place where the door was said to be hidden. The forest thickened, shadows deepening as if the very trees themselves whispered warnings. As they neared the oak, a sudden roar shattered the night, a monstrous sound that wasn't human. Jack spun, heart pounding, to see a figure emerge from the darkness. It was massive, cloaked in shadow, eyes glowing with cruel light. The Hollow's guardian. Jack tightened his grip on the mirror and key. "This is it," he whispered. "The final test." The creature charged, a blur of rage and power. Jack dodged, barely catching a glimpse of its twisted form, a reflection of the village's darkest fears given life. Mara screamed, but Aiden shouted, "Hold the light. Don't let it touch you." Jack lifted the mirror high, its glow blazing like a beacon. The creature recoiled, howling in fury. "This ends tonight," Jack repeated, stepping forward toward the red door hidden beneath the oak's roots. The key fit perfectly into the lock, turning with a satisfying click. The door creaked open, revealing a swirling vortex of shadows and light, a gateway into the unknown. Jack glanced back at Mara, Aiden, and Elin, their faces pale but determined. He took a deep breath, stepping into the darkness. The mirror's light flared once more before plunging him into silence. Jack's footsteps echoed inside the swirling vortex, the strange mix of shadows and flickering light warping everything around him. The air was thick, heavy, as if time itself had slowed and thickened into a viscous fog that clung to his skin. Every breath he took was a struggle, yet he pressed forward, driven by a mix of determination and fear. Behind him, the faint glow of the mirror still pulsed, a fragile tether to the world he'd left behind. Suddenly, the vortex shifted, rippling like water disturbed by a stone. Jack stumbled forward and then stopped. Before him stood a figure, familiar but impossibly changed. It was his father, or at least the ghost of the man he once knew. The face was worn, eyes hollow, but the same kindness flickered beneath the surface. "Father!" Jack's voice cracked, barely more than a whisper. The figure raised a hand slowly, as if hesitant. "Jack, you shouldn't have come here," he said. His voice was distant, echoing as if from another realm. "The curse is more than what you've been told. It's not just the keepers, not just the village's past. It's tied to us, your bloodline. Jack's heart hammered. What do you mean? What does our family have to do with this? The figure's eyes darkened. We are the source and the seal. Generations ago, your ancestor made a choice, a sacrifice to protect this land. But the price was a curse, passed down, hidden in the blood. The keepers maintain it, yes, but they are also its prisoners. Jack's mind reeled. The burden he thought was theirs alone was actually centuries old, tangled in family secrets and ancient magic. So, I've been fighting my own blood, trying to break a curse I'm part of. The apparition nodded sadly. Yes, and every step you take closer to breaking it, the curse fights back harder. It does not want to die. Suddenly, the ground beneath him trembled. The vortex darkened, twisting violently, as if reacting to the revelation. Jack's father's form began to dissolve into mist. Beware the hollow's heart. His voice warned as he vanished. It will ask you to choose between saving the village or saving yourself. Jack was left alone in the swirling void, the weight of the choice crushing down on him. The mirror's glow dimmed to a faint flicker, and through the shadows, he could hear the distant roar of the hollow's guardian, still hunting. Behind the red door, the real battle was only beginning, and Jack realized that whatever lay ahead would force him to confront not just the curse, but the very soul of his family's past. As the vortex pulsed, the whispers grew louder, twisting into voices of the village's lost souls, some pleading, others warning. Jack's grip on the mirror tightened, knowing that each step deeper was a step into danger far greater than he had ever imagined. The curse was no longer just a shadow over medieval England's forgotten village. It was a living force, hungry and relentless, ready to consume everything he held dear. And Jack had to decide. Would he face the hollow's heart and risk losing himself, or would the curse claim another generation to carry its burden into the endless night? Tools. Jack stood in the swirling void, the red door closing silently behind him with a faint click that echoed like a death knell. The air grew colder, heavier, as though the very essence of the curse was pressing in on him from all sides. The mirror's glow was dim now, barely illuminating the dark space around him, but it was still there, a fragile beacon against the growing shadow. He tried to steady his breathing. The revelation about his family, the bloodline tied to the curse, was more than he could have imagined. It changed everything. The weight of centuries suddenly settled on his shoulders, and Jack realized he was not just a man trying to save a village. He was a key player in a story written long before he was born. The ground beneath him felt unstable, like walking on thin ice. Then a soft voice whispered from the darkness, low, beckoning, filled with sorrow and warning. It was a voice he recognized from his dreams, a voice that had haunted him since childhood. Jack! He turned toward the sound, heart pounding. Emerging slowly from the shadows was a figure cloaked in tattered robes, face obscured by a hood. The figure stepped closer, and as the light flickered, Jack saw the pale eyes that shimmered with both wisdom and grief. "I am the last keeper," the figure said quietly. "I was once like them, sworn to guard the curse, to protect the secret. But I could no longer stand by as it destroyed everything." Jack felt a surge of hope and fear all at once. "If you're the last keeper, why are you here? Why not stop it yourself?" The keeper's voice grew heavier. "Because the curse feeds on fear and doubt. It thrives on pain. It can only be broken by someone who carries the blood, someone willing to face the truth without flinching. That's why it has waited for you." Jack's grip tightened on the mirror. "What truth?" The keeper gestured toward the swirling darkness ahead. "Inside the hollow's heart lies the original sin, the act that birthed the curse. But there's more. The sacrifice your ancestor made was not what you think. It was a pact, a bargain struck with a power beyond this world." Jack swallowed hard. A bargain? With what? The keeper lowered the hood, revealing a face etched with lines of sorrow and determination. "With the hollow itself, a spirit of shadow and hunger. Your ancestor trapped it beneath the village, but in doing so, bound his bloodline to its fate." Jack staggered, the weight of generations pressing down. So every time the curse flares, it's because the hollow is trying to break free through us. The keeper nodded. Yes, and now it senses your arrival. The hollow's hunger has grown stronger, and its grip tighter. You are its greatest threat and its greatest hope. Suddenly, a sharp crack echoed through the void, and the swirling shadows coalesced into a shape. A massive, twisted figure with glowing eyes that burned with malice. The hollow's guardian. Jack raised the mirror, its light flaring weakly against the dark. The guardian snarled, a sound like stone grinding against stone, and lunged forward. Jack dodged, heart racing, but the space was tight, the guardian's claws scraping dangerously close. The mirror flared again, casting a protective glow, but Jack knew this was only a temporary shield. The keeper stepped forward, chanting softly in an ancient tongue. The guardian hesitated, snarling but unable to advance further. Jack saw a glimmer of hope in the keeper's eyes. This is no ordinary guardian, the keeper said. It is a fragment of the hollow's power, a sentinel born of shadow and rage. To defeat it, you must confront your deepest fears, face the darkness within. Jack swallowed his fear, feeling the mirror's fragile glow steady in his hand. The choice was clear: fight or be consumed. He took a deep breath and stepped forward, heart pounding with resolve. The guardian roared, shadows swirling violently as Jack's mind flashed with images, his family's secrets, the village's suffering, and the faces of those who had been lost. He felt the curse trying to claw its way into his soul, but he held firm. With a shout, he raised the mirror high, its light bursting forth like a beacon piercing the night. The guardian screamed, its form dissolving into wisps of shadow that vanished into the void. Jack collapsed to his knees, breathing heavily, the mirror's glow flickering weakly. The keeper approached, placing a hand on Jack's shoulder. You are stronger than the curse anticipated, but the hollow's heart still awaits. Jack nodded, steeling himself. He had come too far to turn back now. Ahead, the red door reopened slowly, revealing a passage lined with ancient runes glowing faintly in the darkness. The air was thick with magic and menace. Jack stepped forward, feeling the past and present converge as he ventured deeper into the hollow's heart, where the true battle for the village's soul was about to begin. Jack's footsteps echoed softly as he crossed the threshold into the passage beyond the red door. The air felt heavier here, thick with a damp, earthy scent mixed with something faintly metallic, like old blood long dried but never forgotten. The glowing runes lining the walls pulsed with a cold light, casting eerie shadows that seemed to flicker and stretch like living things. Each step he took sent a small tremor through the ground, as if the very earth beneath the village was alive and watching. The keeper followed silently, her presence a steadying force amid the suffocating gloom. Jack's mind raced, trying to piece together the fragments of what he'd learned. The curse was ancient, tied to a pact his ancestor had made, a bargain with something dark and hungry that lay beneath the village. That meant everything Jack thought he knew about his family, about the village's history, was only half the truth. Why keep this secret so long? Jack asked quietly, breaking the silence. Why not warn the villagers? The keeper's eyes darkened. Fear. Desperation. The curse promised protection in exchange for silence. Your ancestor believed the pact was the only way to save the people. But every generation has paid the price. It is a heavy burden. Jack felt a sudden surge of anger. So we're trapped, doomed to carry this curse forever? No, the keeper said firmly. There's a way to break it, but it demands sacrifice, and it tests the very heart of those who seek freedom. The corridor narrowed as they walked, the walls seeming to close in, the runes glowing brighter. Jack's skin prickled with unease. Then, up ahead, a faint light shimmered, a flickering flame in a stone chamber. They entered slowly. The chamber was circular, ancient stones etched with symbols worn by time. At its center lay a deep well, black and bottomless. The air here was colder still, and a faint whispering drifted up from the depths. A voice, or many voices, pleading and warning all at once. Jack stared down into the darkness. The hollow's heart. The keeper spoke, voice barely above a whisper. This is where the pact was made, where the hollow was chained. But the chains are weakening. Jack's heart pounded. What happens if it breaks free? Destruction, she said. Not just of the village, but everything it touches. The curse would spread like wildfire. He swallowed hard, stepping closer to the well. His reflection shimmered on the surface, distorted, shadowed, like a man on the edge of losing himself. Suddenly, the whispering grew louder, coalescing into words only Jack could hear. Choose, save yourself, or save them. The choice from his father's ghost echoed again. The curse demanded a price. Jack felt the mirror pulse in his pocket, a reminder that light still lingered. But for how long? Then, a chilling sound broke the tension. The slow, deliberate footsteps of someone else entering the chamber. Jack turned, heart in his throat. From the shadows stepped a figure cloaked in dark leather, face hidden beneath a hood. The stranger's eyes gleamed with cold purpose. You don't understand what you're dealing with, the figure said softly, voice like gravel. I've been watching the village for years. The curse is more than a legend. It's power, and power can be taken. Jack's grip tightened. Who are you? A hunter, the stranger replied. One who wants to claim the hollow's strength for himself. The keeper stepped forward, eyes blazing. You will not be allowed. A tense silence stretched between them. The hunter smiled, revealing a flash of teeth. Then I suppose we're at an impasse. Jack's mind raced. The curse was no longer just a burden to be lifted. It was a battleground. Allies and enemies blurred. And the true nature of the hollow was still hidden beneath layers of fear and lies. The hunter lunged suddenly, and the chamber erupted into chaos. Jack raised the mirror, its light flaring, but the battle was only beginning. Jack's breath came in sharp bursts as the hunter's figure lunged forward again, this time with a blade glinting dangerously in the dim light. The mirror in Jack's hand flared suddenly, casting a brilliant glow that pushed back the shadows and forced the attacker to shield his eyes. The keeper moved swiftly beside Jack, chanting softly, weaving an ancient spell that wrapped around them like a protective veil. The chamber shook. The well at the center pulsed like a heartbeat, sending tremors through the stone floor. From its depths rose a chilling wind, cold and filled with whispers of forgotten pain. The hollow was awakening, angered by the clash above. Jack's mind raced. The curse was no longer just a story or a burden. It was alive, hungry, and fighting to break free. He knew the mirror was their only defense, a fragile seal against the darkness. But the hunter was relentless, fueled by his desire to claim that power no matter the cost. With a cry, Jack slammed the mirror's light down toward the hunter. The blade shattered against the radiant force, shards scattering like fallen stars. The hunter snarled in frustration and charged again, but the keeper raised her hands, and chains of light erupted from the runes, wrapping tight around him. No, the hunter hissed, struggling against the bonds. You don't understand what you're stopping. The hollow can't be defeated, only controlled. Jack took a step closer to the well, feeling the raw energy pulsing from its depths. He raised the mirror again and whispered, I'm not here to control the curse. I'm here to end it. The mirror's light grew blinding, enveloping the chamber. The chains binding the hunter tightened, and with a scream, he vanished into a burst of shadows. The keeper moved beside Jack, placing a steady hand on his shoulder. Now, for the final step, the sacrifice. Jack's heart clenched. The pact had demanded sacrifice before, and now it was his turn. The whispering from the well grew louder, voices blending into a chorus of sorrow and hope. Closing his eyes, Jack reached into the depths of his own courage and stepped forward, holding the mirror high. The light descended into the well, weaving through the shadows like a thread of pure hope. The ground trembled violently as the hollow resisted, but the light grew stronger, burning away centuries of darkness. Jack felt a searing pain in his chest, like the weight of generations being lifted. Then silence. When he opened his eyes, the chamber was calm. The well was just a deep pit of stone once more. The curse was broken. The keeper smiled softly. You've done what many could not. Jack felt relief and exhaustion wash over him. But just as he turned to leave, the mirror slipped from his grasp and shattered on the stone floor. A whisper floated up from the shards, faint but clear. "You freed us, but the Hollow's hunger never truly dies." Jack looked back at the broken mirror, realization dawning. The curse was over, but something darker, older, had only just begun. Jack stood motionless, staring at the scattered shards of the mirror. The light he had summoned to seal away the Hollow was gone, broken into pieces that glittered like tiny stars on the cold stone floor. The whisper that rose from the fragments was a cold reminder that the battle was far from over. Something ancient and patient stirred beneath the surface of a world, something older than any curse or pact. The keeper's voice was soft but firm. "The Hollow's hunger may sleep now, but it waits for a new chance. And you, Jack, have awakened something that even the village's history could not contain." Jack felt the weight of her words settle deep within him. He was no longer just a man caught in the grip of a family secret. He was a guardian between worlds, responsible for keeping the darkness at bay. The village, the people he loved, all depended on what he chose to do next. Outside the chamber, the first light of dawn broke over the horizon, spilling warm gold across the village rooftops. The curse had been lifted, at least for now, but the shadows beneath the earth whispered of unfinished stories, of a hunger that would never fully fade. Jack took a deep breath, feeling the chill of the morning air. Somewhere out there, the Hollow waited, and Jack knew the true test was only just beginning. The story wasn't over. It was only the beginning of something far greater. Jack stood frozen beside the shattered mirror, the pieces scattered across the cold stone floor like fallen stars. Each fragment caught the weak morning light filtering through the ancient chamber's narrow opening, casting tiny glimmers that danced in the silence. But the beauty of those flickering reflections only deepened the hollow ache within him. The mirror, once a symbol of hope and power, was now broken. Its light extinguished, leaving behind a whisper, a voice neither friend nor foe, but something older, something waiting. The keeper's words echoed softly in his ears. "The Hollow's hunger may sleep now, but it waits for a new chance." He had faced the darkness and survived, yet the weight of the unknown pressed heavier on his chest than any danger before. Outside, the village began to stir under the first warm rays of dawn. The air was crisp, carrying the scent of damp earth and blooming wildflowers from the meadows that bordered the ancient forest. Birds sang timid songs, their melodies tentative as if unsure whether to celebrate or mourn. The village square, usually buzzing with morning activity, felt quieter, as though the people sensed a shift they could not name. Jack walked slowly toward the entrance of the chamber, each step echoing through the hollow stone corridors. The keeper followed silently, her presence a steady comfort against the creeping chill inside his heart. They emerged into the open air, greeted by the soft hues of morning pink and gold painting the sky. For a long moment, Jack just breathed, letting the freshness fill his lungs. Freedom. The word felt strange, almost foreign. The curse that had held his family and village captive for generations was lifted. Yet, with that freedom came uncertainty, a fragile piece balanced on the edge of something deeper and darker. The villagers began to gather in the square, their faces a mixture of relief, confusion, and cautious hope. Children peered curiously, elders exchanged quiet whispers, and those who had suffered under the weight of the curse finally dared to look up and smile. But Jack noticed their eyes, still wary, haunted by years of silence and secrets. Among them was Eliza, the blacksmith's daughter, who had grown from a spirited child into a determined young woman during these dark times. Her eyes met Jack's with a mixture of gratitude and question. "Is it really over?" she asked softly as he approached. Jack hesitated, then nodded. "The curse, yes. But the hollow, that hunger inside the earth, it's something else. Something waiting." Eliza's brows furrowed, and she glanced toward the forest's edge where ancient trees stood like silent sentinels. "Do you think it will come back?" Jack swallowed hard. "I don't know. But whatever it is, we won't face it alone. The keeper stepped forward, her voice calm and steady. The pact was broken, but the hollow's power is not destroyed. It lingers in the land, in the stones, and in us. We must remain vigilant. Jack felt a surge of determination. He had inherited more than a family secret. He was now a guardian, a protector of this place and its people. The journey ahead would be long, and the shadows deeper than before. But for the first time, he believed they could face it together. That night, as the village settled into an uneasy rest, Jack sat by the hearth in his small home. The broken mirror shards laid carefully on a cloth before him. He traced a finger over one piece, feeling the cold smoothness and the faint pulse of fading magic. His thoughts drifted to his father, to the generations before who had carried this burden in silence. He wondered what they would say, seeing him now, a man who had challenged the darkness and lived to tell the tale. A sudden movement outside caught his attention. He rose quietly and looked toward the window. A shadow slipped between the trees, quick and silent. His heart quickened. Was it the hunter returned? Or something else, something that had waited patiently for this moment? Jack stepped outside, the cool night air wrapping around him. The stars glittered cold and distant overhead, and the village lay quiet beneath their gaze. He knew the true test was only beginning. The curse was broken. The hollow's hunger had not been quenched. And somewhere in the dark, an ancient voice whispered, waiting for the next chapter to unfold. The night had settled quietly over the village of Eldenwood, but Jack could feel the weight of silence pressing in from all sides. It was not the peace of rest, but the stillness of waiting, as if the very land held its breath, uncertain what was to come next. He sat near the hearth, the flickering flames casting restless shadows on the walls of his small stone cottage. The shards of the broken mirror lay before him, each piece gleaming faintly in the firelight. They were fragments of hope, but also reminders of how fragile their victory had been. Jack ran his fingers gently over one shard, feeling the cold surface and the strange pulse that still lingered in its depths. The magic that had once sealed the hollow's curse was broken, but its remnants whispered faintly in the silence. It was a warning, a promise that the darkness was not truly gone. The hollow's hunger, the ancient evil bound beneath the village for centuries, still lingered like a shadow at the edge of his vision. He thought of the keeper, the quiet woman who had guided him through the darkest parts of the journey. Her knowledge of ancient rites and hidden powers had been their only hope. She had told him that while the curse itself was shattered, the forces that had created it were far older, more patient, and far less willing to be defeated so easily. Jack's mind wandered back to the day he first found the mirror, dusty and forgotten in his family's attic, wrapped in old cloth, sealed with runes that pulsed faintly beneath his touch. At first, it seemed like a relic, an old piece of history no longer relevant. But soon, it became clear that the mirror was alive with power, tied to the very soul of the village and the dark secret that had haunted his bloodline for generations. The curse was never just a story told by elders to scare children. It was a living, breathing force that shaped the lives of everyone in Eldenwood. The failed crops, the sickness that swept through families, the inexplicable disappearances that no one dared to speak of. Jack had felt it firsthand in the cold nights when shadows seemed to move with a mind of their own, and in the whispers he sometimes heard on the wind, voices calling from beneath the earth. Eliza had been a light during those dark days. Her determination to help the village, her courage in the face of danger, had given Jack strength when his own hope faltered. Now, as he thought of her, he realized how much the village needed more than just broken curses. They needed unity, trust, and the will to face whatever came next. He looked out the window toward the forest, where ancient trees stood like silent sentinels under the moonlight. Somewhere beyond those shadows lay the source of the hollow's power. The forest was both protector and prison, hiding secrets that few dared to uncover. Jack shivered, not from cold, but from the sudden certainty that his battle was only the beginning. The hollow's hunger might have been delayed, but it was not defeated. There were other forces at work, other ancient powers waiting for their chance. And Jack would have to be ready. He rose and stepped outside, the night air crisp and heavy with the scent of moss and earth. The village slept quietly, unaware of the storm gathering beneath their feet. Jack's heart pounded as he stared into the darkness, feeling the pull of something unseen. From the shadows, a faint rustle came, quick, deliberate. Jack tensed, eyes searching the darkness. A figure stepped forward, emerging into the pale moonlight. It was the keeper, her face calm but serious. "We've delayed the inevitable," she said softly. "The Hollow's hunger never truly dies. It waits for a time when the light fades, when fear returns to rise again." Jack nodded, his resolve hardening. "Then we'll be ready. This village, our home, won't fall to darkness again." The keeper's eyes glinted with approval. "We must learn more. The history of the Hollow is written not just in stories, but in the land itself. The ancient rites, the old magic, they hold the key." Together, they turned toward the forest, where the first hints of dawn began to touch the horizon with a pale blush. The path ahead was uncertain, filled with shadows and secrets. But Jack knew one thing for sure. The story of Eldenwood was far from over, and the next chapter would be the hardest yet. The village of Eldenwood began to stir with the first light of dawn, though an unusual tension hung over the cobblestone streets. Word of the broken curse had spread quickly, but with it came whispers, quiet questions about what it all meant and what might follow. Some villagers dared to hope that the worst was over. Others, like the old blacksmith, muttered that some darkness never truly left. Jack and the keeper walked through the waking town, their steps deliberate. The keeper, whose true name was Miriam, moved with a quiet confidence born of long study and secret knowledge. Her eyes held the weight of centuries, as if she carried the stories of the village not only in memory, but in her very bones. "We need to find the old ways," Miriam said, her voice low and steady. "The Hollow's curse was sealed long ago by a ritual lost to time. But pieces remain, fragments of that ancient magic hidden in the land. We must uncover them." Jack nodded, absorbing every word. "Where do we start? The forest? The river? The old ruins beyond the hill?" Miriam considered this, then pointed toward the thick woods to the north. "The heart of the Hollow's power lies there. The forest is alive with magic older than Eldenwood itself. We must be cautious. The land remembers." As they reached the edge of the village, a group of villagers gathered near the square, their faces drawn with worry. Eliza was among them, speaking quietly but firmly to a crowd that listened with a mixture of hope and fear. Jack moved closer, hearing her words. "We've faced darkness before. This time, we have knowledge. We have each other. Together, we can protect our homes." Her courage gave Jack strength. He stepped forward, joining her as murmurs of agreement spread through the crowd. The villagers needed leaders now, people willing to stand in the shadow of the unknown and refuse to bow. But even as the village rallied, Jack's mind returned to the forest. The deeper mysteries awaited, silent, patient, and full of danger. As they entered the trees, the world changed. The air grew cooler, heavy with the scent of damp earth and ancient growth. Shafts of sunlight pierced the canopy in golden beams, illuminating patches of moss and twisting roots. Every sound seemed amplified, the rustle of leaves, the call of distant birds, the snap of twigs beneath their feet. Miriam stopped suddenly, raising a hand. "Do you feel it?" Jack closed his eyes, reaching out with senses sharpened by days of tension. There was a vibration in the ground, subtle but undeniable, like a heartbeat deep beneath the earth. The forest was alive, and it watched. They pressed deeper, following the pulse through winding paths and shadowed clearings. Along the way, Miriam told stories of the Hollow's origins, of the ancient guardians who once protected Eldenwood, and of the dark forces that had sought to claim the land for themselves. "These forces feed on fear and sorrow," she explained. "They twist nature and humanity alike, turning life into despair. The curse was a prison, but its walls are thin." Jack thought of his family, their struggles and losses tied to the curse's long shadow. The villagers' everyday lives, the harvests that failed, the children who fell ill, all part of a larger story he was only beginning to understand. Suddenly, a sharp cry echoed through the trees. Jack's heart leapt. They rushed toward the sound, coming upon a small clearing where a young boy lay trembling, eyes wide with terror. "Something's wrong," the boy gasped. "The ground, it's moving." Miriam knelt beside him, placing a hand on his forehead. Her brow furrowed. "The hollow stirs. It senses us." Jack scanned the clearing, noticing a thin crack splitting the earth beneath the boy. From it, a faint, dark mist seeped upward, curling like smoke. "We must be ready," Miriam said grimly. "This is only the beginning." As they helped the boy to his feet, Jack realized that the village's fight was far from over. The ancient darkness was awakening, stronger and more cunning than ever. Back in Eldenwood, Eliza worked with the villagers to prepare defenses, gathering herbs and talismans, and reminding everyone that their greatest strength was unity. Jack joined her, sharing what he had learned and urging caution. Night fell again, and the forest's whispers grew louder, wrapping around the village like a warning. Somewhere deep beneath the earth, the hollow's hunger waited, patient and hungry. Jack lay awake, the faces of his ancestors flickering in his mind. The legacy he carried was heavy, but he was determined. Whatever came next, he would stand against the darkness, for his family, his village, and the hope of a new dawn. The night after the hollow stirred in the forest, the village of Eldenwood felt like it was holding its breath. The air was thick with anticipation, as if the land itself was waiting for the final act to unfold. Jack stood with Miriam and Eliza near the edge of the woods, staring into the darkness where the mist still lingered in tendrils around the cracked earth. Every shadow seemed alive, every whisper of wind a secret. Miriam's face was calm, but resolute. "This is where it ends," she said softly. "The curse has fed on fear and pain for too long. Tonight, we break the cycle." Jack felt the weight of those words, but beneath them was a growing flame of hope. He thought of the villagers who had stood with them, of Eliza's bravery in rallying their neighbors, and of the stories that had once seemed distant legends but now held real power. They moved slowly into the clearing, where the mist swirled around the fissure in the ground. Miriam began to chant quietly, her voice steady and clear, weaving words that seemed older than time itself. The forest responded, the wind held still, the birds silenced, and the earth beneath their feet thrummed with energy. Jack stepped forward and placed his hand on the cracked earth. He could feel the pulse, not one of menace now, but of something fragile, like a heart struggling to beat again. The mist began to rise, coalescing into shapes that flickered and shifted, shadows of the past reaching for release. Images filled Jack's mind. The first settlers of Eldenwood, their hopes and fears, the ancient guardians who had made the pact to protect the land, and the dark force that had corrupted it all. It was a story of pain, loss, but also of resilience. Miriam's chant grew louder, and Jack joined her, repeating the words she taught him. Together, their voices filled the clearing, weaving a thread of light through the dark fog. The mist began to thin, and with a final breath, it lifted, dissolving into the night air. The crack in the earth sealed slowly, the ground smoothing as if healed by invisible hands. Silence settled, deep and complete. Jack felt something inside him shift, as if a great burden had been lifted. Eliza stepped forward, tears shining in her eyes. "It's over," she whispered, her voice trembling with relief. "We're free." But even as the village began to breathe again, Jack knew the story wasn't just about breaking a curse. It was about remembering the importance of community, the strength found in facing fear together, and the power of hope to heal even the deepest wounds. In the days that followed, Eldenwood slowly returned to life. Crops grew greener, children laughed in the fields, and the once heavy silence of the forest was replaced by birdsong. Jack walked among his neighbors, hearing stories of small miracles, wounds healing, old sorrows easing, and a new sense of peace. Miriam stayed on for a time, helping the village rebuild and teaching them the old ways, how to honor the land and protect the fragile balance. Her presence was a reminder that history was alive and that every choice shaped the future. One evening, as the sun dipped below the horizon, Jack found himself at the edge of the forest again. The air was calm, the trees whispering softly in the breeze. He smiled, knowing the hollow's darkness had passed, but that its story would live on, in the hearts of those who chose to remember and in the quiet strength of Eldenwood. The past had shaped them, but it no longer defined them. They had stepped into the light together. As the stars appeared overhead, Jack made a silent promise to protect the stories, to honor the land, and to carry forward the hope that had saved them all. The journey had been long and hard, but it ended with something precious, a future worth fighting for. The village of Eldenwood began to stir with the first light of dawn, though an unusual tension hung over the cobblestone streets. Word of the broken curse had spread quickly, but with it came whispers, quiet questions about what it all meant and what might follow. Some villagers dared to hope that the worst was over. Others, like the old blacksmith, muttered that some darkness never truly left. Jack and the keeper walked through the waking town, their steps deliberate. The keeper, whose true name was Miriam, moved with a quiet confidence born of long study and secret knowledge. Her eyes held the weight of centuries, as if she carried the stories of the village not only in memory, but in her very bones. "We need to find the old ways," Miriam said, her voice low and steady. The Hollow's curse was sealed long ago by a ritual lost to time. But pieces remain, fragments of that ancient magic hidden in the land. We must uncover them. Jack nodded, absorbing every word. Where do we start? The forest? The river? The old ruins beyond the hill? Miriam considered this, then pointed toward the thick woods to the north. The heart of the Hollow's power lies there. The forest is alive with magic older than Eldenwood itself. We must be cautious, the land remembers. As they reached the edge of the village, a group of villagers gathered near the square, their faces drawn with worry. Eliza was among them, speaking quietly but firmly to a crowd that listened with a mixture of hope and fear. Jack moved closer, hearing her words. "We've faced darkness before. This time we have knowledge. We have each other. Together, we can protect our homes." Her courage gave Jack strength. He stepped forward, joining her as murmurs of agreement spread through the crowd. The villagers needed leaders now, people willing to stand in the shadow of the unknown and refuse to bow. But even as the village rallied, Jack's mind returned to the forest. The deeper mysteries awaited, silent, patient, and full of danger. As they entered the trees, the world changed. The air grew cooler, heavy with the scent of damp earth and ancient growth. Shafts of sunlight pierced the canopy in golden beams, illuminating patches of moss and twisting roots. Every sound seemed amplified. The rustle of leaves, the call of distant birds, the snap of twigs beneath their feet. Miriam stopped suddenly, raising a hand. "Do you feel it?" Jack closed his eyes, reaching out with senses sharpened by days of tension. There was a vibration in the ground, subtle but undeniable, like a heartbeat deep beneath the earth. The forest was alive, and it watched. They pressed deeper, following the pulse through winding paths and shadowed clearings. Along the way, Miriam told stories of the Hollow's origins, of the ancient guardians who once protected Eldenwood, and of the dark forces that had sought to claim the land for themselves. "These forces feed on fear and sorrow," she explained. "They twist nature and humanity alike, turning life into despair. The curse was a prison, but its walls are thin." Jack thought of his family, their struggles and losses tied to the curse's long shadow. The villagers' everyday lives, the harvest that failed, the children who fell ill, all part of a larger story he was only beginning to understand. Suddenly, a sharp cry echoed through the trees. Jack's heart leapt. They rushed toward the sound, coming upon a small clearing where a young boy lay trembling, eyes wide with terror. "Something's wrong," the boy gasped. "The ground, it's moving." Miriam knelt beside him, placing a hand on his forehead. Her brow furrowed. The hollow stirs. It senses us. Jack scanned the clearing, noticing a thin crack splitting the earth beneath the boy. From it, a faint, dark mist seeped upward, curling like smoke. "We must be ready," Miriam said grimly. "This is only the beginning." As they helped the boy to his feet, Jack realized that the village's fight was far from over. The ancient darkness was awakening, stronger and more cunning than ever. Back in Eldenwood, Eliza worked with the villagers to prepare defenses, gathering herbs and talismans, and reminding everyone that their greatest strength was unity. Jack joined her, sharing what he had learned and urging caution. Night fell again, and the forest's whispers grew louder, wrapping around the village like a warning. Somewhere deep beneath the earth, the hollow's hunger waited, patient and hungry. Jack lay awake, the faces of his ancestors flickering in his mind. The legacy he carried was heavy, but he was determined. Whatever came next, he would stand against the darkness, for his family, his village, and the hope of a new dawn. The first dawn after the hollow's mist disappeared felt like a breath drawn after a long hold. Birds sang louder than usual, and sunlight filtered gently through the trees as if nature itself was celebrating the village's newfound peace. Yet beneath the calm, something unsettled lingered in the air. A quiet tension, a reminder that while one chapter had closed, another was just beginning. Jack woke early that morning, the memory of the clearing and the ceiling of the fissure vivid in his mind. He walked outside, the village slowly stirring around him. Faces brightened at the sight of the sun, but many still carried the shadows of years spent under the curse's heavy grip. He knew healing wouldn't be instant. Eliza approached, her steps light but purposeful. "You did well last night," she said, a small smile breaking through the fatigue in her eyes. Jack shrugged. "We all did. I'm just glad it's over." "But is it really?" she asked, her tone serious. "I've been thinking. The curse was tied to the land, yes, but something else fed it too. Fear, mistrust, secrets kept in the dark." Jack nodded slowly. "We all carried pieces of it. Maybe some parts of it are still alive, in us, in the way we think, in the stories we tell or don't tell." Miriam had been clear about one thing. Breaking the curse wasn't just about sealing a crack in the earth. It was about healing wounds deeper than stone and mist. Trust had to be rebuilt. Old wrongs needed to be faced. The village's survival depended not just on magic or rituals, but on people coming together in honest ways. Jack and Eliza decided to visit the village elders. These are people who remembered the old ways and held the memories of what came before. Their faces were lined with time, their eyes reflecting centuries of struggle and resilience. They welcomed Jack and Eliza warmly, but with an unspoken gravity. "There is more to this story," Elder Rowan began, voice low but steady. "The hollow was a symptom, not the sickness. Long ago, a promise was made, a pact with powers beyond our understanding, to protect these lands from invaders. But such pacts come with cost." "What cost?" Jack asked, leaning forward. Rowan sighed. "The pact demanded vigilance. When the village's heart faltered, through betrayal or fear, the power twisted. It fed on pain and division, growing stronger, until the hollow appeared." Jack felt the weight of those words, realizing that the curse was born from human failings as much as from any dark force. "So, if we want true peace, we need to fix what broke the pact." "Yes," Rowan nodded. "And that means looking inward as much as outward, healing not only the land but the people." That evening, Jack and Eliza walked home beneath a sky thick with stars. The village felt different now, quieter, hopeful, but still fragile. They talked about what Rowan had said, how the real work had only just begun. "Maybe this is the hardest part," Eliza mused. "The curse was something we could see and fight. But changing people's hearts, that's a lifelong battle." Jack agreed, feeling a mix of resolve and uncertainty. "We'll need help." In the days that followed, word spread through Eldenwood of the curse's lifting. Some celebrated openly, while others remained cautious, wary of hope. Old rivalries simmered beneath polite greetings, and mistrust still shadowed many interactions. Jack and Eliza began organizing gatherings where villagers could speak honestly about fears, regrets, and hopes. They invited Miriam to help guide these meetings, her wisdom a steady anchor. At first, the meetings were tense. Voices rose, old wounds reopened, and tears were shed. But slowly, something shifted. Walls came down. People listened. Stories were shared. Laughter returned. One afternoon, as Jack walked through the village square, he noticed a small group gathered around a traveler. A young man with curious eyes and a satchel filled with strange tools and books. The traveler introduced himself as Elias, a scholar from a distant town, drawn by rumors of Eldenwood's strange history. Elias spoke of forgotten knowledge, ancient texts, old magic, and secrets hidden in plain sight. He believed the curse was tied to forces beyond the village's borders, connected to larger currents flowing through the land and time itself. Jack felt a new spark of curiosity. Could the curse's roots stretch further than they realized? Was Eldenwood just one piece of a much larger puzzle? Elias offered to help uncover these mysteries, and with Miriam's blessing, he stayed in the village. Together, they pored over dusty manuscripts, searched old ruins, and pieced together fragments of history. As they dug deeper, unsettling truths emerged. The pact that once protected the land was part of a delicate balance between light and shadow, order and chaos. Breaking the curse might have restored one part of that balance, but also risked awakening other forces, forgotten, restless, and hungry. Jack began to understand that the village's fate was intertwined with things far beyond the forest and fields around them. Every step forward revealed new dangers and new questions. One night, as a storm raged outside, Jack and Elias discovered a hidden chamber beneath the oldest part of the village, walls carved with symbols that pulsed faintly in the dark. Among the carvings was an inscription that hinted at a second pact, a secret kept by the village's founders to guard against a deeper evil. The realization hit Jack hard. The curse might have been the surface wound, but below it lay something older, more powerful, a threat that could undo everything they had fought to save. With his heart pounding, Jack called Miriam and Eliza to the chamber. Together, they examined the symbols, trying to decipher the warning. The storm outside seemed to echo the turmoil within. "We need to be ready," Miriam said quietly. "This is far from over." Jack felt a mix of fear and determination. Eldenwood had survived the Hollow, but now a greater shadow loomed. Their village was at a crossroads, between light and dark, past and future, survival and destruction. The coming days would test everything they believed in, every bond they had forged. But Jack knew one thing for sure. They would face it together. As the first light of dawn touched the chamber walls, the air shifted, charged with ancient power and new resolve. The next chapter in Eldenwood's story was about to begin. The days after discovering the hidden chamber passed in a blur of whispered conversations and cautious exploration. The villagers moved with a new kind of watchfulness, eyes flickering to the forest's edge or the oldest stones in the village square, wondering what secrets still waited in the shadows. Jack found himself restless. Sleep came fitfully, haunted by half-remembered dreams of voices speaking in riddles, ancient symbols glowing in the dark, and the feeling of being watched by unseen eyes. Even the familiar faces of Eliza and Miriam couldn't anchor him completely. There was too much unknown, too much danger pressing close. Elias proved to be an invaluable guide through this maze of history and magic. His knowledge of ancient lore was deep, but even he admitted that the symbols carved into the chamber walls were unlike any he'd seen before. They spoke of an old balance, a fragile harmony between forces that few dared to name. Order and chaos, Elias explained one afternoon, tracing a finger over a pattern that looked like twisting vines encircling a glowing orb. Light and shadow, life and death. These symbols are a map, a warning, but also a promise. Jack leaned in, the weight of those words settling over him. A promise of what? That balance must be maintained, Elias said softly. If one side grows too strong, The world itself can unravel. The idea was almost too much to grasp. Yet, as Jack looked around Eldenwood, he could see the truth in it. The curse had been a sign of imbalance, a crack in that delicate order. Fixing it had bought them time, but it might not be enough. Miriam gathered the village elders one evening to share their discoveries. The small meeting room filled quickly, the air thick with anticipation and unease. Voices rose and fell as the elders debated what to do next. "We must prepare," Elder Rowan said finally, voice steady but grim. "The signs are clear. This is no longer just about Eldenwood. It's about the whole land." "Prepare for what?" a younger voice asked nervously. "For a storm," Rowan replied. "A reckoning that will test us all." Eliza reached out, taking Jack's hand under the table. They exchanged a look, equal parts fear and determination. The village began to organize differently. Watch posts were set along the forest edges, and training sessions were held to teach people how to recognize danger. The old ways of protection, long forgotten or dismissed, were revived. Herbs were gathered, charms crafted, and prayers whispered under breath. Even children were taught to be alert, their games weaving lessons about courage and caution. But despite all this preparation, shadows crept closer. Strange noises disturbed the nights. Unexplained lights flickered beyond the trees, and a chill settled in the bones of Eldenwood. One evening, Jack and Eliza walked toward the river where the village's water was drawn. The moon hung low and full, casting silver light over the rippling surface. Suddenly, a figure stepped from the shadows, tall, cloaked, face hidden. Jack tensed. "Who's there?" The figure raised a hand, voice calm and familiar. "Do not be afraid. I am here to help." Jack's heart skipped. It was Miriam, but something in her eyes was different, harder, colder, filled with a secret weight. "What's happening?" Eliza whispered. Miriam looked at them both, her expression unreadable. "The balance is shifting faster than we thought. Forces long silent are stirring. We must make choices, sacrifices, if we want to survive." Jack felt a knot tighten in his stomach. The calm they had hoped for was slipping away. Days later, a sudden illness swept through the village. It began quietly, a cough here, a fever there, but soon spread rapidly, striking the young and old alike. The healers worked tirelessly, but the sickness was strange and fierce. Fear gripped Eldenwood tighter than any curse. Jack found himself at the center of it all, organizing aid, comforting families, and searching for answers. Elias suggested the illness might be connected to the imbalance, a sickness of the land bleeding into the people. "We need to find the source," Elias said urgently. "Something is poisoning the roots of this village, physically and spiritually." Jack, Eliza, and Miriam ventured deeper into the forest, following faint traces of corrupted earth and wilted plants. The path led them to a forgotten glade, where the ground pulsed with a dark energy. At its center lay a small pool, black and still, emitting a faint, unnatural glow. "This is it," Miriam said, voice barely above a whisper. "The sickness flows from here." Jack stared at the pool, feeling the weight of centuries pressing down. "How do we stop it?" Miriam looked to the others. "We must cleanse the land, but it will demand a price." The group set to work, gathering herbs, chanting old songs, and drawing symbols around the glade. The air thickened, the ground trembled, and for a moment, the darkness fought back, writhing and pulsing like a living thing. Then just as suddenly it began to recede. When the last shadow faded, the pool was clear once more, the forest breathing a sigh of relief. But the cost was evident. Jack's arm burned fiercely, a mark glowing faintly beneath his skin, a sign that the land had chosen him, or claimed a part of him. Back in the village, life slowly returned to normal, but Jack knew they had only delayed the inevitable. The balance remained fragile, and the forces waiting in the shadows were patient. He looked at Eliza and Miriam, and felt a surge of hope mixed with dread. Together, they had faced the curse, the sickness, and the darkness. But what lay beyond was still unknown. A larger challenge that would test their courage, their bonds, and their very souls. As the sun set over Eldenwood, painting the sky with fire and shadow, Jack understood one thing clearly. The story was far from over. The days that followed the cleansing were quiet in a way that felt unnatural. The village of Eldenwood moved slowly, like it was holding its breath. The children played softly, their laughter muted, and the elders met in hushed tones behind closed doors. Everyone was waiting for something, but no one could say exactly what. Jack's arm throbbed constantly, a reminder of the price paid at the glade. The mark burned faintly under his skin, a pale swirl that pulsed like a heartbeat. He tried to hide it, but Eliza noticed immediately. "That mark, it's changing you," she said one evening as they sat beside the hearth. "You're not the same." Jack nodded, frustration tightening his chest. "I feel it too, like something is waking up inside me. Something I don't understand." Eliza reached for his hand, squeezing gently. "You're not alone." Miriam had been distant lately, spending long hours studying ancient texts and speaking in riddles. Jack sensed her burden was heavy. One afternoon, he found her by the river, staring at the water with eyes full of worry. "The balance is fragile," she said without looking at him. "More than we feared. That sickness was only a symptom. Something deeper stirs beneath the earth, beyond even the curse." Jack frowned. "What do you mean?" "There are forces older than Eldenwood, older than anything in these lands. They don't sleep forever, and now they are waking." The weight of her words pressed on Jack's soul. It was one thing to face curses and sickness. It was something else entirely to face ancient, unknowable powers. Days later, rumors began to spread of strange figures seen on the village outskirts, cloaked strangers moving silently through the night. Some said they spoke in forgotten tongues, others that they carried strange symbols carved into their skin. No one dared approach them. Jack, Eliza, and Miriam decided to investigate. They followed the trail one moonless night to the edge of the forest, where an eerie silence wrapped the trees. Suddenly, the cloaked figures appeared, emerging like shadows from the darkness. Their faces were hidden, but their presence was undeniable. One stepped forward and spoke in a voice both cold and commanding. "You meddle in affairs beyond your understanding." Jack stepped forward, defiance burning in his eyes. "We protect our home." The stranger's laugh was low and hollow. "Home is a fragile thing, easily broken. You think your actions matter? The world beyond this village is shifting, and soon you will see that you are but pawns in a game far larger than you." Before Jack could respond, the figures vanished into the night, leaving behind a lingering chill. The next morning, the village awoke to find strange marks burned into the fields and along the paths. Symbols like those in the hidden chamber, but twisted, distorted, as if corrupted. Panic took hold. The elders called for a gathering, voices rising in fear and anger. Some demanded they fight back with weapons and fire. Others pleaded for calm and patience. Jack stood before them, trying to calm the storm. "We've faced darkness before," he said. "We will face it again. But we must be smart. We must learn what we're dealing with." Miriam nodded beside him. "The marks are warnings, signs that the balance is tipping." Eliza added quietly, "We need to understand the forces behind this, not just fight blindly." The tension in Eldenwood was thick. Families locked their doors early, torches burned late into the night, and every shadow seemed to hold threat. Jack couldn't shake the feeling that time was running out. The ancient powers stirring beneath the earth were awakening, and the village was caught in the middle. One night, as Jack walked the village edge, the mark on his arm flared brightly, illuminating the dark path ahead. Drawn by a force he couldn't resist, he found himself at the Old Well, a place whispered about in Eldenwood's oldest stories as a gateway between worlds. A soft light glowed from the depths, and as Jack peered down, he saw shapes moving beneath the surface, figures trapped between realms, calling out for help. Suddenly, a voice whispered in his mind, ancient and powerful. The balance must be restored, but the price will be great. Jack staggered back, heart pounding. The path ahead was more dangerous than ever, but the fate of Eldenwood, and perhaps the entire world, depended on what he chose next. As dawn broke, painting the sky in shades of gold and crimson, Jack knew one thing with certainty. The real battle was just beginning. The sun hovered low over Eldenwood, casting long shadows across the thatched rooftops and rippling fields. For the first time in weeks, the air felt still, not the stillness of dread or waiting, but of quiet understanding. The chaos had passed. The village had survived. Jack stood at the edge of the old well, the very one where he had first heard that whisper from the depths. It was silent now. Whatever ancient presence had stirred in the darkness had returned to slumber, at least for now. The mark on his arm had faded, its strange glow no more than a memory. His body bore no visible scars, but his soul would never be the same. Eldenwood had changed too. The fields where strange symbols had once burned now held fresh crops. The forest, once thick with uneasy whispers, had gone still and green again. Children played without looking over their shoulders, and laughter rang freely once more through the village square. But there were changes that couldn't be seen, quiet ones that lived inside the people themselves. A kind of respect, a unity, a shared strength. Eliza sat nearby, watching him with soft eyes. "Do you think it's really over?" she asked. Jack gave her a small smile. "No, but I think we've bought ourselves time. Maybe that's enough for now." They walked together toward the village. Around them, friends and neighbors waved and nodded. Miriam stood outside the chapel, her hands full of worn scrolls, her face calm. She had found answers in the oldest books, knowledge that had helped save them all, but she now believed it was only a glimpse of something larger. "The land remembers," she had said days earlier, "and what sleeps beneath, it dreams still." Jack had learned to accept that mystery. Not everything needed solving all at once. Some things were meant to be watched, guarded, and handed down in stories so that those who came after would know how to listen. That night, the village held a quiet celebration. No grand feast, no loud speeches. Just flickering lanterns, music from a single fiddle, and stories passed between generations. Jack sat among them, listening more than speaking. The tale of what had happened had already started to become folklore. They spoke of the sickness, the symbols, the strangers, and the glowing mark. But with each retelling, the story softened, not to erase its pain, but to make it livable. Later, as the stars spread across the sky, Jack wandered alone to the glade where it all began. The clearing was peaceful now. No black vines, no chanting echoes. Just soft moss, cool air, and a faint breeze that carried the scent of pine and old earth. He knelt there for a while, not to pray, but simply to feel, to remember. Behind him, Eliza's voice broke the silence. "You never told me what the voice in the well said." Jack turned to face her, the moonlight tracing the line of his jaw. It said the balance must be restored, but the price would be great. She stepped closer. And was it? He thought for a moment. Yes, but not just in loss, in change, in what we learned about each other, about ourselves. They stood together, side by side, as the wind rustled through the trees. In the months that followed, Eldenwood slowly returned to life. Some villagers left to visit neighboring towns, sharing their story. Others arrived, drawn by rumors of a place that had survived darkness with quiet resilience. Jack helped rebuild what had been lost. Eliza taught children not just how to read, but how to listen. And Miriam, ever the keeper of truths, began writing a new history, a careful blend of fact and myth. But beneath it all, the land still whispered, not in fear, but in memory. Years later, when Jack was older and the mark long gone, a traveler came to Eldenwood, dust-covered and wide-eyed. The man spoke of strange storms and symbols in other parts of the kingdom. He asked if the stories he'd heard were true, of a village that had faced the dark and held the line. Jack looked out over the fields, the forests, the people who had become his family. He thought of all they had faced and all they still might. "They're true," he said quietly, "but the story isn't over. It never really ends. It just waits for someone else to listen." And as the sun dipped behind the hills and night blanketed Eldenwood once more, the village settled into silence. Not the silence of fear, but of peace. For now.